This is Tony Franq. I'm with Hitachi Vantara, and today I'm going to cover kind of the recent development inside what is called hyperconverged, big hyped solutions in the marketplace, and things are actually evolving a lot in this area, and I'm here to give you an idea of what is happening in the market as we see it. So just to put everything in a kind of in a picture, what is actually hyperconverged? Because there's a lot of definitions on it, but this is, I would say, something that most people are talking about. And that the hyperconverged, if you have on the right side, you have your server, and the idea is that the server basically is your data center. So it contains the hypervisor, it contains, of course, the server and the CPU. You have the network, and you have your storage. And all these are combined into one solution, thereby the word hyper. So everything is converged into this one server box. And of course, it is really a way to simplify your data center. And some of the things that comes into play, of course, is that it's very easy to scale out. It's a scale out solution. So you basically just add nodes when you need more capacity. There are quite many solutions in the market already, and it is market proven. It has been on the market for something like 4 to 5 years now. And what it does is that the simplification kind of pans out directly into efficient operations. So really a nice place to run your infrastructure in this way. What is different in hyperconverged versus what used to be converged or still converged is actually the storage part. And the storage part is actually constructed in quite a different way. So when you look on the right side here, here's kind of a classic infrastructure where you have your VMs on top. In the middle, you have the green layer, which is your SAN fabric, where you have your connection to the storage. And then underneath, you have your physical storage system. And the way that you scale out here is that you, of course, when you need to scale out more capacity, you scale out your servers, adding more servers. And then when you need more storage, you scale up by adding more hardware to the storage part. So that's the way you grow on the right side. That's a bit different on the left side when you're looking at a hyperconverged solution, because there you have everything in one server box or one node, as you sometimes call it. And in those server nodes, we're talking about a network fabric, so not a SAN fabric. Everything is based on IP. So it's Ethernet connectivity all the way through. And what we do is that we take the disks sitting inside the nodes and put these in disk groups. And so that it's the difference is that when we scale out the servers, we scale out at the same time the storage. And then we just add software licenses, and thereby you grow your storage. So when looking at what we now call hyperconverged version 1, so that's kind of the initial release that came out something like 3-4 years ago and has been in the marketplace so long. And what is important to understand here is that on the positive side is that definitely it's easy to manage. There are very few components. As you could see, there's basically a node and then you add another. It is quick to enable, so pretty quickly you can add more nodes. And the good thing is also you can stand up this environment very easy. You just need network connections, some configuration, and then you're going. So, and it's also in the marketplace, it's now become kind of the new normal. And it, of course, gives you this simple scaling as I talked about. On the con side or the negative side, there are sometimes not always everybody talking about this, but there's definitely reality here that you need to know about. And this is what I'm trying to highlight here. This platform is not typically your performance and response times platform. It's kind of an average okay for generic workload, but in version 1, definitely performance and response time were not impressive. And that's why you also didn't really place things like mission critical databases or high-end applications you didn't put on this piece of solution. Another thing which is not often talked about is that even though it sounds like it's cheap because you use the internal disks, the storage actually comes at a price. And if you go through the different kind of solutions in the market, so the vSAN, which is the most leading platform, you pay a vSAN license for every piece of storage you put in there. And that's not maybe the cheapest license. So that adds, of course, to the price of the storage. For other solutions like Nutanix, you're using some CPU resources to make sure that you get your storage going, and that eats up quite a lot of resources. So in that way, you have a kind of a cost in that sense. And then finally, another example is for the solution from HP called SimpliVity. You add some special hardware to the server to enable the storage part. So that's kind of performance, response time, maybe not the best. It can be expensive depending on the sizing of the solution. And what we often see also is that there can be an inflexibility in the scaling, since you only grow node by node by node. What has happened since then, in the early days, like 3-4 years ago, HCI or hyperconverged has grown up. And right now we are talking about both kind of a middle layer where we are around now for the HCI 1.5. And later on, I'll come on to what we call HCI or hyperconverged 2.0. And in 1.5, some of the missing pieces of version 1 has been solved or has been added to the solution. And one of the areas has definitely been on the software side, where you have added a lot of security. So for things like software-defined networking has come into the solution from different vendors. Most market leading is NSX by VMware, but also things like compliance and these kind of security features has come into the solution. Naturally, things like backup, restore is now also part of a hyperconverged solution. And also a lot of things have been done in the area of disaster recovery and high availability, because that was one of the drawbacks of the solution in the beginning. But where we are now at 1.5 and 2.0, there's quite many solutions in the disaster and recovery area. New area that also has come in, which is now getting more and more normal in the hyperconverged area, is for the mission critical applications. Because those applications in the beginning were not so happy about the stability of the platform, the response time of the platform, and even things like certification were not in place. But most of these things are now in place. And now, for example, you can get mission critical application like your SAP or SAP HANA or your Oracle databases are now certified and can run and perform on the hyperconverged infrastructure. And then finally, we're adding more features. These were kind of things that you would expect to come. And then now we're also starting to add to the platforms things like file support, NAS support, object storage, and others. So we're getting a richer solution overall. So that's for the 1.5. So, and this is where we are now. What is now mentioned is where we're heading, and some of these functions that I'm going to mention now is actually already in the 2.0. So yeah, there's one thing missing, sorry. That's of course that we also started to implement things like cloud management and service management. So here you have your service catalog, you have your automation, maybe you have your public cloud. Initial rollout has been available for some time in version 1.5. 2.0 is really now where we're heading. And some of this is already here and some of it is just around the corner. And what is interesting is that the performance discussion I mentioned in the beginning is now being really addressed, and some solutions have come out there, and definitely a lot of vendors are focused on this performance area. Due to this performance or lack of performance, we also got kind of a middle solution in the marketplace. It's called DHCI or disaggregated. I'll come back to that, and that addresses some of the missing things that we saw in some of the inflexibilities and some of the performance lacking in version 1 and 1.5. The public cloud, everybody is talking about public cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. All that is now also available in the 2.0 version. A lot of solutions out there in this sense. VMware, I would say, is leading the bunch for the VM-based workload, but also a lot is happening in what I call the cloud native area. So where we're talking things like containers, serverless computing, API-driven applications, all these things are now also part of the new 2.0 hyperconverged solutions. So let's start. the performance part. What is now available in the market, Hitachi being one of the leading partners here, is that we're really focused in on making architectures which addresses this lack of performance. So what we've done is that we've introduced things like this architecture, where you in the bottom area where you see the capacity tier, this has been upgraded a lot by introducing new technologies. This new technology is called NVMe, and NVMe is kind of going through the journey of first the servers, and now it's more and more predominant also in the storage boxes. So NVMe is kind of a new way to address your disk, and I'll come a little back to that. And to speed that up even more, we also now use in the architecture what is called Intel Optane, and Intel Optane is also a completely new technology. And the value of Optane is that it has very near speed of memory. And this is actually where we put our cache. So the caching of the vSAN goes on to this Optane first, and that is really, really responsive. We're talking microseconds for that drive itself. And then it tiers it off to the NVMe drives, which are also really fast. And that's why in total, as you can see here, you will get something like a 5 to 10 times better performance when you go into these architectures where we're talking all NVMe with Optane on top. So really, really interesting technologies coming into the hyperconverged world, and really being used in the marketplace now. So a lot of customers are moving in this direction, and it's all certified and available in the market right now. Another place where we needed to solve some of the lacks or the problems with the hyperconverged was in the storage area. So what the solution that has come up is something called disaggregated storage. So this is where you have your storage sitting as an external storage system. And the value here is, I've tried to picture it here, as you can see, you have your virtual machines. When they address or need storage, they just talk to a storage policy. A policy could be things like a gold tier or a platinum tier or a silver tier. And then when you deploy the virtual machine, you just tell it, I need 10 gigabyte of storage, and I would like to have it on platinum. And then it will automatically be deployed on the external storage system. So there's no management of this at all. It's built into the platform. You just choose how much capacity and what tier do you need. And then it'll automatically go to external storage, or it'll use the internal vSAN storage in the hyperconverged stack. So very, very simple to use. And the value, of course, is really high, because what you get here is that when you use the external storage system, you get the enterprise performance that you could expect by having enterprise storage system. You get the reliability, and this is actually a way to get your 100% data availability for your storage. So really, this is where you move the needle from fast to extremely fast. Next thing, as I mentioned, the response time, because response time equals performance. And here is really where you can move it down to the millisecond level, where when we're talking typically in vSAN storage, we're talking microseconds. When we're talking external SAN storage, we are talking milliseconds. So there's quite a lot of difference in the response time here. And then finally, which also is important in addressing one of the cons that we had on the first slides, is that with this solution of having disaggregated, you can actually grow on the right side. So your external storage system can grow completely independent on how many nodes you have. And that's the picture we see with customers, that often you will have a different sizing than you maybe expect, and you're not forced with disaggregated to, whenever you buy a node, you also get storage. You can buy server nodes when you need more compute, and you can buy storage when you need more storage. It doesn't have to be both. So that's really something which addresses a lot of the needs from customers, again, coming with 2.0. Also with 2.0, which we find very interesting and is really helping customers day by day in the market, is the integration done by several vendors. And again, I would say VMware is one of the predominant ones, where VMware has developed their solution so that you can now combine your private cloud with your public cloud in a very, very seamless manner. So you can just take basically a VM or an application, set of VMs running in your private cloud, and then just migrate it straight into the public cloud. And you can, of course, have VMs or containers running in both areas, talking and working together. So this seamless integration is really, really nice. And this is, again, some of the things that comes out of the 2.0 of hyperconverged. You can do it to many platforms now. In the beginning, it was not many, but now you can do it to really many cloud providers. Final point that I want to mention for the 2.0 is that, of course, for the cloud native applications and containers, we see a lot of drive there. Customers who wants to work with things like Red Hat OpenShift with the different container platforms, maybe under Kubernetes. And what you can do with the solutions now in Hyperconverged 2.0 is that you can run it both in a hyperconverged stack and run your whole container platform, both for developers and for operations, so the DevOps scenarios. You can also use it on the VMware Cloud Foundation, which enables your journey, or as I mentioned just before, the journey and the value of being able to put your containers directly into the public cloud. So run your workload where it makes sense. This goes both for Red Hat, but also goes for the newest applications or the newest frameworks in the market, which is VMware Tanzu, which addresses the same need, but under the VMware brand. So with VMware Tanzu, you can set up your whole development and operations organization and the tool set to support Kubernetes or container platforms. Oops, just gonna press the right button. Here we go. One way that we see is really interesting is that to be able to go to do 2.0 of hyperconverged and maybe decide how much do you want in your public cloud, how much do you want in your private cloud. We see very often that customers are really struggling to figure out how is this really, what is the money in this? So what we've done to many customers is that we've gone into what we call a digital economics assessment with them, and we can provide based on the customer's actual IT landscape. So not a calculation or simulation. We actually go in and measure the IT landscape. We come out and we do a transparent comparison, and everything that we compare in this TCO calculation is based on your actual current infrastructure, being your servers, your storage, your licensing, your admin cost, and so on. And based on these parameters and our clever models, we can actually go in and tell you exactly what is the utilization of your platform and how we can move the needle. So in this example, customer had 29% utilization. Just by moving that to 38% utilization, which doesn't sound dramatic, this can often mean millions of kroner or many euros for changing this. So in total, this can give you an overview of what will actually be your spend if you go for a private cloud, either converged or hyperconverged, or your public clouds, either on AWS for VMware Cloud or for the normal Azure cloud services. So really, it's just, really tangible numbers all the way through. And this, of course, gives you a comparison so you can actually see what will be your cost in total, but also per VM. And that was actually what I wanted to tell you today. Thank you very much. Thanks.